Hello and welcome to CG Spectrum. My name is Scott Claus. I'm a 2D animation mentor at CG Spectrum. I will be messing around with some animation stuff today, a scene that I'm working on in progress, and we'll be talking about general animation stuff. I would love to hear from anybody out there. First of all, I'd like to hear if anybody can hear me and if they can see me. It's always challenging at the beginning to find out if things are actually working or not. So if anybody's out there and would like to just pipe in and say, hey, yes, I can see you, I can hear you, that's awesome. And then I'll jump into it and start talking about some of the things that I'm going to be working on and show you some examples of stuff. But like I said, I am here for whoever's interested to chat about whatever you like. I have a lot of experience in animation. I worked at DreamWorks and Disney and Rhythm and Hues in 2D animation, CG animation, creature effects, and character animation in CG. You can check out my IMDb Internet Movie Database profile if you're interested in finding out some of the stuff I worked on. But right now, I'm concentrating mostly on 2D animation, which is something we teach at CG Spectrum. So if you would like to know more about that, please visit the website. It should be available somewhere on wherever you're watching this. Again, I'm assuming anybody is watching this. So that's just a little bit of an overview. But like I said, today I'm going to be working on a scene that I've been kind of putting together for a while. It's based in some old types of animation that I used to like a lot, which is I used to enjoy Don Bluth stuff. They did these cartoons in the 80s that were video games, and I really enjoyed playing around with those when I was younger. There were lots of other influences of Ralph Bakshi films, and trying to think of some of the other things that I liked. Disney stuff obviously was a big influence on me. And then I watched a lot of TV animation that was not necessarily the most high quality stuff in the world, but certainly was an influence. And I knew a lot of friends who worked on these things, like Super Friends and stuff like that, when I was a kid. And that was an influence of mine too. A lot of people are interested in doing anime style stuff. While I have not worked in that particularly in that style, I'm also really interested in it and I like it a lot. And I think the rules are applicable. It's a design style, but once you know the basics of 2D animation, which it takes a long time to master and a lot of practice and a lot of love, but once you know the basics of it, you can adapt that style to different adapt to different styles of animation and create whatever kind of animation you like. I'm going to go ahead and just put my scene on the screen right now. So rather than just yammering away, you can see what I'm actually working on. And while I'm talking a little bit more in an overview sense, I'll just play this and let you see first off where it's at right now and continue on. So here is the scene in progress. It'll take it a second to play at speed. So as you can see, so I'm going for something that's a little more of a featurey look, which means it's very smooth. The characters are very rounded, and the idea is that there's an appeal to them being round. So it's a little different than the anime style. And I'll move in and I'll examine this a little closer so you can see what it is that I'm working on and how I got there. Up until now, I've been working on just the character on the blue guy. And today I will probably be working more on the monster and putting that together a little bit more. Well, I've drawn Skull. I'm glad you caught us today too. And welcome. And I will try not to do too much repeating. You can always go back and look at these. They should be archived somewhere wherever you're hanging out today. You can see how I got here. I started off with this in rough. Well, hello there, Sean. How's it going? Nice to see you again. So yeah, so I'm not going to continue on. I'm not going to go over all the steps that I went through to get to this point so far, which you can see in older videos if you're really interested. Rather that, I will just kind of press on today and mess around with the scene as it's going today, with what I've got here, which is, like, as you can see, which is a threatening monster. Probably what I'll do is do some rough in-betweens and make this thing a little more smooth while I get the conversation started, because I'm sure you guys have things to talk about. You certainly did last time. So feel free to get the ball rolling. My question is always, for people who are out there, is, what style are you interested in, and what draws you to animation? What is it that you look at animation, you go, oh, really, that's really cool? Not all animation's different, the same. So there must be things out there that you're interested in that inspired you to like animation in the first place, and maybe that means you want to do that too, like you want to animate in that style. So have you seen these shows? Well, thanks, you guys. Flattery will get you everywhere. This animation's so good. I appreciate that. Have you seen these shows called Rocket Power? My Life as a Teenage Robot? No, I have not. Let me make a note of that real quick. So I'm going to use this time while I'm streaming to make a note of stuff that's that I want to look back at later. Cool. Yeah, I'm always interested in finding out what's going on, what people think is cool, and checking out the latest and greatest, because animation's an ever-changing thing. It's constantly evolving, and just because one thing is popular now doesn't mean that it's going to be popular always. So before I get into it a little more, just in case anybody missed it, or anybody's joining us for the first time, or you just want to get a review of it, this is the hero character. So I call it hero in the sense of this is the lead character, whoever the protagonist is in this little bit of business. So I animated this based on reference. I didn't bring it with me today, but I used reference to get just the general feel of this, and then I went through and keyed it out. So let me show you the keys first. So that's just roughing it out. Just expand this. We're using Toon Boom, in case I haven't made it clear. We're using Toon Boom in CG Spectrum. We do that for two reasons. One, because it's a great program, and two, because we happen to have another mentor who works in CG Spectrum in the 2D department, who is fairly close to being expert level, and knows this program inside and out and can really help people understand this. So understand animation as a Toon Boom thing. But my feeling is always, once you get one software down, you go into another software program and you look around and go, oh yeah, I recognize that. I know what that is. That belongs here. I just need to find it. It's the same thing with Maya. Once I learned Maya, everything was easier after that. But once I learned Maya, then I was able to transfer those skills to other software programs. It was just sort of like, oh, I know what it's supposed to do. I just need to find out where it is, where I should be looking for what I need. So, all right. So I'm going to just zip through this real quick and show you the keys and breakdowns. Sorry. So go through this channel, and then so here are the keys and breakdowns for this character. And so these were the original drawings that I started out with, keyed it, and then broke it down. In fact, I'll just start with the keys. These were the original drawings. Just these drawings, which I did in a real loose form. I'll show that in a second just for review. But I got some questions here, so I'll just let that run a little bit while I talk about this. Like this, so John Skull, yes, I know you like that darker stuff, don't you? Well, I like it too. I don't see a lot of it anymore, but because I don't have time to watch stuff. But I certainly was drawn to some of the more edgy stuff. I liked it when the Disney stuff would get a little darker, the earlier darker Disney movies. And then I liked Bakshi, and I liked a lot of the anime stuff I saw in the 90s, which is, obviously starting with Akira, but then, oh boy, my mind's drawn a blank. I saw most of the cool stuff in the 90s. What's the blue one? I can't remember. You guys, I'm sure you guys know. But I haven't watched. Obviously, I haven't watched them in a long time, so I don't. I don't remember even the titles of them, but obviously like Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle and stuff. Perfect Blue. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that knocked my socks off when I saw it. I went and saw it in the theater. My friend Ken, who's also an animator, he said, "Hey, you got to go see this. It's like a Brian De Palma movie except animated. It's going to be great." And you probably don't even know who that is, but it convinced me, and I was blown away by it. I just thought, wow, what you can do with animation that isn't being done in the States, certainly. It's just incredible. So these are the keys, and I'll just have the breakdowns in case you're interested. In terms of 2D styles, yeah, Ghost in the Shell. There you go. There's another example. Now, the thing is if you want to do that kind of realistic animation, you need to be very good at drawing. And that's something that we emphasize a lot in our classes, and even before you take the classes. If you're not the best fine artist in the world, you should keep practicing until you are, but you need to at least have an enthusiasm and love for it. I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to over the years who want to do animation, but they either don't like to draw or they don't practice drawing. And you absolutely have to have a love for drawing, and you have to practice a lot. So that's something to think about if you want to be an animator. Now, if you want to do something else in animation, maybe you don't have to draw. There are lots of jobs you can do in animation that aren't what some people call the glory jobs of drawing. So there's room for everybody if you love animation. But yeah, Perfect Blue, Ghost of the Shell, Spirited Away, Howl, Howl's Moving Castle. There are more. I like some of the more obscure Miyazaki stuff. I loved, what's it called, the English version, Only Yesterday. It's a soft, sad, sensitive movie where there's no monsters, there's no nothing, but it's just the power that the animation has. Never ceases to amaze me when it's done well. So that was the cleanup version of this scene. Might as well just show the rough version of it too, just for laughs. There it is. It's currently a little bit hidden. I'm going to make it a little less transparent so you can see it better. Again, you guys have probably already seen all this stuff, but just in case there's one person out there who hasn't seen this and is interested, this is what my rough animation looked like before I cleaned it up and made it all shiny looking. If you're on style into the animation fan, recognize you for that. Do you have to stay with that style? Sorry, I'm reading your messages. This is great. I love these questions. Do you have to stay with a style? No, you're never bound to a style. You're bound to the style of a studio, but you, as a person developing your own style, you can do whatever the heck you want. Think of it this way: if you work on a show, you need to work in multiple styles, and that's why I always tell people: start with life drawing, start with fine art, learn how to draw like nobody's business, and you can always adapt that style to something specific, like the anime manga look. Believe me, I mean, maybe you've seen it already, but the people who draw for that kind of work, they can draw any style that they choose, but they specifically choose that style and adapt their work to that, and it works that way. It should work that you can, I mean, even people at Disney, if you look at the work that Disney artists do, the good ones from the classic years and stuff, they're fine artists first, and they were fine artists before they drew Pinocchio and Alice in Wonderland or whatever, or even even the CG artists I know that are really, really good. They're fine artists. They understand design and silhouette and the 12 principles, regardless of whether they're drawing a Disney character or something more rugged. So animes that are getting rare. Yeah, it is weird. It's anime, I think, is going through a funny transition, just like 2D did in the States, where they're like, well, how are we going to do a hybrid of CG and 2D? How are we going to make that work? Which they will, and I think it'll be awesome. I think it's great when there are hybrids and when people come up with new ways, well, basically new ways to dream, because that's what movies are, and good shows. All right, so but speaking of style, I've said this before, and I'll just reiterate it. It's something I truly believe in and shout it any chance I get, which is that you already have your own sense of style. You've already got a sense of style. It just needs to be developed. You need to just keep working at things and keep practicing and doing your thing. And what you'll find is that eventually your work will become more original. You will be adapting things that you pull from all sorts of different quarters and turning it into your own specific sense of style. Even if you're copying something that someone else did, you're creating your own sense of style in progress as you do that. So don't be afraid to copy stuff. You should be copying things, but also continue to do fine art practice, life drawing, perspective, color theory, acting. Keep honing your acting talents. I think it's funny when in animation studios they'll have acting classes, and fortunately I was never forced to do that because I would have been mortified to do an acting class. I got into animation because I didn't want to be an actor because I didn't have the chops to be an actor. I wanted to hide behind an animated character, but that doesn't mean you're off the hook. You still have to be you have to understand acting. And that's one of the things we teach at CG Spectrum in the animation classes is acting and acting choices. So it's a never-ending process where you continue to work on your skills all throughout your life. I've worked with some of the best in the business and some of the modern day geniuses like Glenn Keane, Andreas Deja, James Baxter, who I have a lot of respect for. Obviously, I mention him a lot. And then Ken Duncan, who's actually still doing 2D animation in Burbank and worked on the Mary Poppins movie a couple, 2-3 years ago. And these people, they're still working on their style. They're still continuing to upgrade their talents and still suffer from insecurity like we all do as artists. It's okay. Allow yourself to suffer from insecurity. You're not alone, and it keeps you humble. So yeah, so I was this question about Tim Burton's style and how he got fired. I was mentioning that last week, and I'm pretty sure they're still out there. There are drawings that he did for this thing called the Horn King. The one I remember, and I had this story told to me before I actually saw it, confirmation of it, but there's this Disney film. It's a traditional fantasy film done in the 80s. Then they were trying to do traditional fantasy before it was a thing. And 80s films, they didn't 80s fantasy films did not succeed. And so they hired Tim Burton to do, right out of CalArts, I think, to do some character design work on the Black Cauldron. And one of the first things he did was he came up with this crazy-eyed wizard, this Horn King wizard. I might be able to still draw it a little bit because I used to like drawing it. But it's this crazy-eyed wizard whose hands were basically were puppets. So basically, the hands came right out of his arms. So if you can imagine, like he had like a sleeve, and then his hand would come out of his arm, and then he'd have a puppet on the end of it. And of course, it was I can't draw in Tim Burton's style, obviously, but this crazy-eyed thing. And it was like Two-Face. One of them was happy, and then one of them was like grouchy or scary looking. And so the Horn King would sit and look at his two puppets, which were actually his hands, and he would make decisions based on what the puppets would tell him. So he had antlers, just like the one in the final movie. Again, I'm just rushing this out. I don't remember how it looked, but you can find this stuff online. But I just thought it was so funny that Tim Burton comes up with this idea of these two puppets, and he'd look at them and he'd say, should I do this or should I do that? And they were his hands, but they were puppets, and he was just this freakish Tim Burton looking character. I just thought it was genius, but it had nothing to do with the Black Cauldron. It was not, obviously not the direction Disney wanted to go at the time. And so they respectfully invited him to leave. And basically, well, they didn't say this to him, but it's how it happened. Is when you're making a lot of money, come back, and then we'll bring you back on to make money for us, which is exactly what he did. I also like to tell the story of how he made a short film before he became famous, and some of my friends are in it. Something like Beach Blanket Murder, Beach Blanket something. It's supposed to be like the 60s Beach Blanket films with Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello, and he made this Super 8 film in I think it was in CalArts, because all his friends were in CalArts with him, and they shot it on the beach down in Venice or down in Malibu or something. And it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And so from humble beginnings comes genius. So anybody can do it. Anybody can, well, anybody who's got the drive and the heart and keeps practicing has the opportunity to do it. I don't know if you're going to make it or not, but you certainly have the opportunity if you try. And I tell another story about my friend Mike Mitchell. I won't do that one again, but Mike Mitchell, who's currently a working director and is very cool and very fun to work with. He did Trolls, I think. And he just kept making movies until somebody said, okay, shut up. We'll give you a budget, make a movie for us and make lots of money. And then he can do it again. So, yes, good for him. Yeah, getting perspective, it's a mathematical thing. I mean, that is something where you definitely want to go to a class and you go, oh, okay, so there's my horizon line, there's my perspective. All the lines come out of there, then you draw a grid, and then you can place your characters on the grid using squares that are based on, you know, the grid itself. And then you know to put 1 foot here and 1 foot there and build the character up from scratch like that. So all that stuff's available. You just got to take classes in this stuff, or you have to go find it online, which you can do that too. And then there are books, certainly a lot of old books. What books do you recommend that I should look for in anatomy, life drawing, and animation? As it happens, I have some handy, and I will share those with you now if you're interested, because I think it's a good idea to keep up on this stuff. So I will pull this up and show you exactly which books that you should have. It's funny that through the years, the books have stayed the same. No matter what, it seems like no matter how we get the books that were created like in the 40s and 50s, they're still good ones. So one of my favorites is Andrew Loomis. Well, let's start with this one. So Jack Ham. Jack Ham is a good one for showing off real basic styles that are real simple and clean. And so he did cartooning. Obviously, this is 100 years old, but or more. But what he does is he shows you the value of good silhouettes. And again, this is an example of somebody who started out as a fine artist and then was able to turn this into cartooning because he knew the rules first, and then he went back and he applied the cartoony stuff to it. All this is stuff that we teach in the class, you know, start with basic shapes and then add things to it. But you can't even make the circles until you, and you know, the gestures until you actually have an understanding of what it is that you're doing. So you don't want to just, you know, copy somebody just to copy them. So let me find this one. So here's a great one, Andrew Loomis, and these are PDFs. I'm not going to incriminate myself online while this thing is being recorded. I'm dumb, but I'm not that dumb. But I've acquired these. They're PDFs. I'm not sure where they came from myself, actually. I certainly didn't take them from anywhere. I was given them. But you may be able to find them. I'm just saying, you might find them out there somewhere. But Andrew Loomis does a whole series of books, one of them drawing the head and hands. Ooh, joy. How many of us have problems with drawing hands, right? So this is a nice way to get a handle on how to draw heads and hands. And he takes it from the ground up, and he's got pages and pages and pages of this stuff. Now, some people don't particularly like books, and they don't want to go through all of this. So the good news is there's a lot of pictures, and so if you just kind of look at the pictures, you're already getting a good lesson. And often it's not, what I find with these books is it's like self-help books in the 90s. What you need to do is just confirm what you already knew, which is, oh, I have to practice this stuff a lot, and I have to observe a lot, and I have to think a lot about what I'm looking at so that I can translate it into actual drawings. So a lot of this is just reminding you to observe things, to break things down into their smallest components, to understand the relationship between the head, the neck, and the shoulders. And so when you go to draw it, you know, well, that's got to be there, so I'm going to have to structure it a little bit so that I can see it, and so I can translate it into my work. The tech we have now can easily, yeah, so the technology is there to make movies, and that's why I say all the time, if you want to make a movie, make a movie. If you want to make an animated film, go out and make one. Nothing is stopping you. I started out just going for it because I didn't have any resources. And so I started with flip books. And I might just show a little bit of my cartoon today just for fun, since you guys are cool. Normally I don't show this stuff because it's embarrassing, but now you really want to see it. But it's just my way of saying that, you know, you absolutely start from scratch and just keep doing it until you get better, and just keep doing it until you get better. And nowadays that's easier than ever. Like you said, we can make films with minimal technology. I've seen a lot of things on Netflix and Amazon Prime that were purchased that were not, they were basically glorified student films. And certainly they were better than the student films I was capable of making when it was just Super 8 film or even 16mm film and clunky lights and clunky sound equipment and cameras that make a lot of noise. And so the films that I made, they were not technologically very proficient technically, but you know, if I'd kept going with it, I probably would have gotten better, and certainly with the equipment that we have today, I would have gotten a lot better too. So I love that she's wearing high heels. That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, these are old, but you get the idea. So Andrew Loomis is a great resource to answer your original question. Another thing that you can do, especially during these times, go online and look up figure drawing. You can just look it up and you'll find all sorts of resources. I'm going to do it right now right before I look for my film. By request is life drawing models. First I want to make sure they're not naughty, because oftentimes they'll be nude, which all these are. All right, so that's a thing too, is you can, if you want to get your jollies. Here, let's look at one that's safe. And but anyway, the point is that all I had to do was type in life drawing, and I get all these examples of people in poses, and that's what you should be drawing from. You should be drawing from poses of real people in action. Yes, you should be copying you know, character designs as you like, but you want to start with the real thing. You want to go back to the real thing and look at people in all their glory and all their imperfections. And you also want to look at people moving, because you're going to have to get used to replicating motion if you want to be an animator. And even as a life drawing person, to look at something that's moving and trying to capture it with a quick sketch, that's what you end up doing a lot to become better at your work. So yeah, so drawing nudes doesn't get any better. I mean, you should be doing that all the time if you want to draw either in comic books or graphic novels, illustration, and certainly animation. And then animals. You know, animals are important if you want to work for some of the big studios. So Oscar Francis says, I did Andrew Loomis. Yeah, great. Still found it hard to get in the industry. So what is the secret to getting into Hollywood? Well, the secret is stubborn persistence, not going away. You just don't give up. Pretty much everyone I know had a hard time getting into the business in some capacity. They were wanting something that they didn't get, and then all of a sudden, for bizarre reasons, they just found themselves getting their foot in the door. I was physically rejected. I was rejected when I applied for the studio that I ended up working for and staying with for years. I applied for a job, and I've told this story before. It's a little bit uncouth, I guess, to repeat it, but and I called up to see how it went, and they kind of told me off, this person, and asked, well, was there anything I can do that maybe I can improve my work? And she said, no, you're just really, really far away. You're not anywhere near close, and good luck to you, pal. And it was as I was walking out the door that someone recognized me and said, it's a long story, I don't want to go through it again, but I've told it many times. But I'm walking out the door, someone just randomly said to me, oh, are you Scott Claus? Hey, didn't you want to work here? Well, if you can't be an animator, would you like to be a driver? And that's how I got into the business, and everything kind of hung off of that. So I always say you have to take whatever opportunities you get, and then you have to be prepared. Another of our mentors, Simon, who also does streams like this and does things like Unreal Engine, if you're interested in that kind of thing, which I know everyone is. He had mentioned it's like, well, you also have to be ready when your time comes, when your chance comes. You have to be able to say, here, I've got a bunch of stuff. Yeah, hire me and I'll do this for you and help you make lots of cash. So that's a big part of it, is not only being ready, but being a little bit lucky. But how do you get lucky? You just keep putting yourself out there. You join groups, you talk to others, you ask them how they did it, and you continue to be a cool person who is very excited and eager and interested. And that's really the secret. And then the rest of it is luck. I mean, at a certain point, you'll find, oh, there's Simon. Hey, Simon. Yeah, so I'm quoting the genius Simon Warwick, who's also a mentor and also helping us, or is also putting out streams and showing things. Okay, I'm going to show just a little bit of a cartoon that I did years and years and years ago. I'm going to turn the sound off. I'm not going to do this for too long. That's silly. But this is, and it's also, I don't know if this is appropriate, but this is something I did years and years and years and years ago, actually in the 90s. And it was had all done with cell animation. The quality is not so good. This is the best print I have of it. I have a print of it. I showed it at DreamWorks. It's on 35 millimeter. It looks beautiful when you see it on a huge screen. It doesn't change the animation. The animation is what it is. I had to do all of this by myself. And well, I didn't have to, I chose to. And so I did it all myself. No, this is bad. I shouldn't show this. But, oh, well, anyway, I did it all myself. I painted it. All the material was donated by a studio called Bear Animation. And there we go. Yep. All right. So all the stuff was donated, but I did it all myself. I wanted to do it all myself. It was important to me. I was young. I was dumb. It's 5 minutes long, and people didn't think it was very funny. It's not violent enough to. It's nostalgic. Okay, that's enough of that. They thought it was. Some people thought it was too violent. Some people didn't think it was violent enough. It was kind of too middle of the road. But it was about people losing their jobs. And when everybody at DreamWorks was about to lose their job, it played like crazy. And people laughed. They thought it was awesome at the DreamWorks Film Festival in the 2000s at some point. Anyway, but the point is I just made my own film. I didn't let the fact that I wasn't ready stop me from doing what I wanted to do. And so you shouldn't either. If you're eager, if you want to get into the business, great, that's awesome. Keep trying. But if you find that you aren't getting into the business, keep doing what you love. Keep enjoying yourself, and trust me, you'll have a body of work one day, and you can have people. You can have people saying to you, "Oh, how'd you do that? Oh, maybe I'd like to have you do that for me sometimes." Oh, you want money for it? Okay, well then I'm going to require that you actually pay me if you want if you want me to do that stuff for you. So I was trying to think if I had. Yes, I've seen Cat Dog. Yeah, it's awesome. I thought I'd seen it. I haven't seen it in a while, but yeah. And that's what I was trying to do with my short. Was I was trying to come up with a style that was easy to do quickly. That was something that I could do very fast. And do all myself, because I didn't want anybody else to get involved in it. And so I tried to make this style unique, kind of like I don't know, Charlie Brown, or we didn't have Adult Swim, we didn't have Nick at Night cartoons yet. That was still coming. I mean, this is a long time ago, but it gets nasty again. But we did have, like I said, 70s cartoons, and yeah. Okay, it's enough of that. I don't want to offend anyone by showing. So it's not that bad. It really isn't. But I don't want to take the chance of doing something that I don't want to necessarily share with everybody. Well, my mom's seen it. My nephews saw it when they were babies. They didn't care. But I'll just keep it safe. Anyway, it's a tease too. I can always say it's brilliant if you've never seen it, right? Good cell animator can easily become good theaters. Yes, good fundamentals. Oh, that's a really good point. That you bring up, Oscar, which is transferring from your skill sets from one medium to another. A lot of people found that to be very challenging. Going from 2D to 3D was not something everybody could do. It required too much of an understanding of software for people at that time. Nowadays, I don't think it's that tough. I think people are coming out with, growing up with computers and trying different software programs, and a lot of the stuff that we had to learn from scratch, they know the basics of. And I think that's awesome. I think you guys are so lucky that you're able to start off with a base foundation of knowledge already, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And like you said, you can just take what you know already and expand on that. So, so good for you. But it was really tough when we did it in the early 2000s. It was, or actually it was, I think, around 2000. It was a nightmare. And I always like to tell the story of sitting down with the Maya handbook, which is about, I have a book this size right here. This is for my master's. I have to read this book because I'm currently in school myself. And so I have to learn from this book. But this is what the Maya book looked like. It was about this thick. I don't have it anymore. And it was filled with crack tutorials. I always like to share that. It was filled with lessons that had just like one little thing missing or changed. And as a result, you'd spend hours trying to figure out why something didn't do what it said it was supposed to do, and just make yourself crazy. And then there was nobody to talk to back in those days. You had to kind of just suss it out yourself. And a lot of people just went, enough, I can't do this. Well, we don't have to do that anymore. Nowadays, there are lots of resources you can pull from. And so again, you guys were really lucky, and you should take advantage of that. Wherever it's available, just make sure that you're always using the resources that are available, not going, oh, well, someday, maybe I'll do this someday, but I don't feel like it right now. Well, now is the time. Do it now, or miss a boat when the time comes and everybody else is getting online. CG Spectrum, a collage, or it's online. It's an online school. If you go onto the website, which is just cgspectrum.com. Let me just make sure. cgspectrum.com. I'll type it in chat just in case. And it's an online school. The classes, one thing at a time here, the classes are either you can get individual mentors, or you can get actual classes themselves with like a group situation like you would if you went to a physical building. But it's online. You can do it from anywhere. You can, to some degree, choose your times, and you certainly can focus on just the one thing that you like. There are certain prerequisites to make sure that you're able to take the class, but other than that, certainly you're going to focus on the one thing that you're most interested in, and not end up having to take, at least not yet, take a bunch of GEs, general education things along with that. It's specializing in specific things. So that's an advantage. Teen Titans, you like Teen Titans? That's great. Yeah, that's cool. And coming up with characters is really awesome. And again, you don't have to be an animator. You can be a character designer. You can be a layout person. You can do storyboards. You can do rough storyboards that other people clean up. Those are all options. And yeah, we're all rooting for you. It's really cool. Yes, figure drawing design invented by Michael Hampton. I have not heard of Michael Hampton. There are so many cool resources out there. I wouldn't even know where to start. I've shown you a couple of them. I love you guys sharing things in the chat. If you have links, feel free to link to something, as long as it's nice and not naughty in one way or another, in which case you'll be blocked immediately, apparently, I've found. So yeah, but if you have resources, it's always fun to share those with other people who are interested in learning more about this stuff. Because nowadays, the information age we live in, it's just about impossible to keep up with everything. So a lot of the things people will say, well, what's your favorite current cartoon? You're always talking about the past. What's something current that you actually like? And the bottom line is, I'm old. And so I watch clips of things. check out all the stuff my students like, but I don't regularly watch anything anymore because there aren't enough hours in the day. And I'm too busy teaching. And what I'm teaching, the things that we teach in our class, these are things that are universal. So the styles are going to change. Technology is going to change. But you'll find that the actual basis of things is going to stay the same. The 12 principles never go out of style. And that's why they were invented, is to capture the essence of what you need to know if you want to be an animation person. It's just the basics, basic bottom line fundamentals that you have to know, have to know if you want to be an animation type. And so, yeah, so to keep exploring different resources, but understand that some things are classics and are never going to go out of style. And once you know them, you know them, and you're on your way. So learn them. Don't be afraid to go back and learn. Another one, Preston Blair. I mean, Preston Blair is still working not working, but the stuff that he taught is still working today, and that stuff's older than the hills. So I'm going to just type these in here for you guys, just in case you're interested. Andrew Loomis, Preston Blair. Those are a couple ones that I talked about, just so you know. Want to oh, you're taking the 2-week trial. That's awesome. Good for you, Hannah. That's really cool. I mean, it's free, right? I don't want to say anything, get in trouble, but yeah, I believe that there's trial period where you can test out the classes and see if you like it. So yeah, go ahead and give it a shot. See what happens. Now, if you want to animate and design, let's say you want to be one of these types of people who wants to just do everything, right? Well, then you're better off making your own shorts. At that point, you probably want to do your own shorts, because then you can control everything. And that's what I did. That's what I was doing with my films. It's like, nope, I want to make sure that I'm responsible for every single thing in my work. And what I found out later is, boy, it's a lot easier if you have people help you. It can be very time consuming and stressful to try and do everything yourself. And what a gift it is when you find somebody who's a real pal and is willing to help you out and help you bring your work to life. So I think certainly that you want to, if you're doing your own short film, then you want to be in charge of everything. But there might come a time when you're like, hey, could you help me with some in-betweens? I had somebody help me with painting my cells, and it was the happiest week of my life, because for once things were moving forward, and it wasn't just me sitting there trying hour after hour to try and make everything come together. And so that's definitely something to be said about having people help you with stuff. But then you got to deal with, not to be mean, but you have to deal with their egos, and you have to deal with what they want out of it. You have to ask yourself, well, if I'm going to help somebody with a film, why? What am I getting out of it? Will I get the experience of it? Will I get some cash? In short films, they always say, at least if you provide meals, so if you feed people, then at least you're giving something for something. And depending on how much work they're going to be offering up to you, I always would at least give people meals. I tried to pay people. I definitely give them a credit. And I've still got people that I've promised, well, someday when I've made it, I will pay you back with cash, with all this money that I've earned from my projects. Well, that hasn't quite happened yet, but that doesn't deter the fact that I was definitely, my heart was in the right place, and I wasn't asking them to do anything more than I would have done. And basically being very upfront with them and saying, well, this is what I can give you, and if you're happy with that, then great, let's do business. But if you need more than that, then yeah, probably I can't imagine us working together, because I don't have any money. On the shows that I did, I had to pay, because you get what you pay for. If you're going to do a short film with live action, you definitely want to pay people. You want to get the best talent your money can afford. The actors will make all the difference in your short. No special effects in the world are going to hide bad acting. So if that's the route you're going, live action, then you don't want to scrimp when it comes to your actors. I've seen the best animated films in the world that had or not animated, live action films that just had the worst acting I've ever seen. So you don't want to be that person. Back and forth character design and animation. That's cool. And people always ask me, they say, well, is it better to be a jack of all trades and learn a whole bunch of different skills, or is it better to become somebody who is very proficient in one specific thing? So should I specialize, or should I become a jack of all trades? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Ha ha ha, right? Yes, you should be a jack of all trades, and you should be a master of one thing specifically. And the reason I say that is because we're talking entertainment, we're talking creativity, art. There are no rules, and the sooner you accept that, the happier you're going to be, because it's just the truth. There is no one hard and fast rule that will get you where you want to go. You're going to have to try things and see what happens. I know so many people who set out to be the next Steven Spielberg and ended up being, you know, a cleanup person at Disney for years and years and years, enough to where they could buy a house and have kids and be fulfilled creatively, and yet they never became Steven Spielberg. But they really had a great career, or they're still having a great career. And that's because they kept themselves open to possibilities. When you're just getting started out, you reach for the highest goal that you can possibly hope for. You don't need to set limits on yourself and say, well, I'm going to just aim low. You know, to say, oh, okay, I want to start my own studio, and I want to make it the best studio that ever existed, and do a feature film every year, and have 6 people, and I'm in charge. You know, whatever. Just start out with a dream and go out there and make it happen. But then just be open once you get out there to the concept of, okay, well, I didn't exactly become the next Steven Spielberg, which is not surprising because there's only ever been one in history of him, you know, in the sense that there is literally only one Steven Spielberg. But there are a lot of people who didn't get to where he got, who are still fantastic directors and storytellers. So there's no just one single path. But yeah, you probably won't get there the same way he got there, but there are lots of other different paths that you can take, and you won't know until you reach for something really high. So yeah, reach for the stars, and then you may find that you get to get your own little piece of something on the way there. All right. So here I've been working on the tentacles, and now I'm just going to work on the beast level for a while and turn everything else off and just flesh it out, and maybe start cleaning it up and making it look shiny and pretty, which is the longest and more arduous part of the task, but it can also be the most satisfying in many ways, because you don't have to think too much, which is why I'm going to do it while I'm streaming, so I can continue to talk but do something mindless in the background. I don't want to sound mean, but I think people wanting to be Spielberg is a little idealistic. You think? Do you think it's a little idealistic to want to be Spielberg? Well, first of all, I mean, Spielberg, that's already happened, right? It's I saw, what was that last thing he did, Ready Player One, and I was like, yeah, this doesn't feel as relevant to me as some of the other stuff that's coming out lately. It's got sort of an old-fashioned feel to it that I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not sure he's got his finger on the pulse of what's happening out there right now. But, you know, maybe he does. But for my money, I've seen other things that were a lot more immediate. And so even the idea was, oh, I want to be Spielberg. Well, what part of that do you want? Do you want to remake E.T.? You want to be famous? You want to be able to call your own shots? Even he couldn't call his own shots. Even he answered to Julia Phillips, which, by the way, it's a great book. It's old-fashioned, but Julia Phillips wrote a book called You'll Never Eat Lunch in This Town Again. And it's all about her life as a producer and doing drugs, we shall say. And she worked with Spielberg a lot. And it's very telling. It tells you a lot about him and how he worked. And it makes a lot of sense. I don't know if you got to take everything with a grain of salt. But seeing how he was, you're like, oh, well, yeah, that was a different era. It was a different time. And we're not in that time anymore. We're in a time where you can make your own film. You can put it out there. And maybe next Netflix will buy it. You never know. Until you've made the movie, you can't really say. That's a good rule of thumb that I like to point out to people too, is don't be naive enough to think that anybody's ever going to pay you money to go out and make the film of your dreams. I'm not being cynical. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just being honest, because it's a cold wake-up call to people who don't understand that that's how Hollywood works. It's not a matter of, oh, I have this dream project and I want to go out and make it. It's if you want to do that, then do it. There's nothing stopping you. It's, oh, I don't have enough money. Raise it. Kickstarter. And I know it sounds simple to say that, but a lot of people do. And if they do it, you can do it. So if you just want to make your own film, go out and make it. If you want to be a working director, then you work for hire. You work on projects as a person, who's hired to make that film. So like the guy that I worked with, who I kind of started out in the business with, Mike Mitchell, I'm not close friends with him. I was directed by him after years of being kind of a contemporary of his. Suddenly he was directing the film and I was working on it for him. And I didn't even talk to him on that film. But it's been 25 years since I last known him, and I never knew him that well. But the point is he was hired to work on the films. He was a director looking for work like a freelancer, and he got hired. Another person just passed away. It's a sad story. I shouldn't tell it, but Kelly Asbury, a director I did know and talked to a lot, DreamWorks, and he worked on a couple films that didn't do so well in the end and was just crushed by them. But he was like, I had to do something. I'm a director. I need to find a film to direct, and movies cost money, and you have to convince producers to spend money. You have to convince billionaires to put money into a film that is likely not going to make anything back. It's just going to give them enough money so they can make another one. And there's always the promise that eventually there's going to be a return. And as long as they just keep going, nobody ever notices that, like, none of the films have actually really make money. I mean, they make money, obviously they make money, but it's just funny. It's not how a lot of people think. Ooh, I go out, I make what's, I don't know, the most popular film going these days. I can't even think of, just think of the last film that made $1 trillion, and you think, did one person sit down and go, ooh, I have this idea, I want to make a movie, give me, a few $100 million, I'll make it and make it $1 trillion. Nah, it just doesn't work that way. But if you want to be a working director, you can do it. I know a lot of people. I know a couple of friends who have recently become directors. Mentioned it last week. I should know his name, Michael. I can't remember his last name. He did Legend of, I'm going to say this wrong, Lorna, Lorna, Yorna. I don't know how you pronounce it. I'm sorry. So he got to direct the first one, did pretty well. So he gets to direct another one. Those aren't his films. He made shorts before he made that, and got his opportunity to direct. Probably fought and clawed and begged and maybe blackmailed a little, and now he's directing. And good for him. And if he directed a serviceable film, he's already doing better than most people. So, which he did. So, anyways, that's going off on a tangent. But I think it's just best to know the reality of things and not be disappointed. That's all I'm trying to convey is not be disappointed when you say, hey, I've got this wonderful idea, how come nobody's buying it? Well, that's because it kind of doesn't work that way. I also like at this point to mention my friend, well, I consider he's still a friend, we don't talk all the time, but Josh, who did the Lucas the Spider series, who's developing that into a series as we speak, and he was just picked up online. He did these videos on YouTube. He got millions of hits overnight, and people loved it and kept loving it, and that caught the attention of somebody somewhere. And plus he's pretty aggressive. Well, not aggressive, but he's a cool person. People like him. He's got a lot of friends, and they eventually he has been able to finagle that into something lucrative. And so anything is possible, but you'll never know unless you try. You get out there and you have to just try things. knocking on someone's door, proceeding to demand a lot of money for a film that may or may not fail. It's risky. I can see why. Yes, it is very risky to ask people for money, but that's how it's done. Believe it or not, that is how it's done. Is people go, hey, I've got this property. It's like a stock option. It's more like gambling, high stakes gambling. And if you invest in this, there's a potential for you to get a return on it when it makes money. And then you get a portion of it. They get part. They get a part. We all get a piece of it, depending on how you negotiate your contract. And that's a whole other thing I know a thing or two about. But you're convincing people to give you money with the understanding that they're going to get something back. Now, Kickstarter, you can actually promise them gifts and things like that. So it's like, hey, I give you what you wanted. You don't get a piece of the bigger picture if it makes money, but you do get a gift as a result of investing in me, and that's pretty cool too. So if you had your own film studio, can you make whatever you want? So here's the thing. I always like to talk about Jeffrey Katzenberg. Speaking of, if you have your own film studio, can you make whatever you want? Jeffrey Katzenberg started DreamWorks more or less as a way to get back at Michael Eisner, because Eisner, he'd worked for Eisner at Disney on Lion King, and they got into kerfuffle. And Katzenberg was very much an, well, I'll show you type kind of person. And he basically said, well, I'll show you, I'll create my own studio and prove to you that I can do better than you can. And he did. It took a long time, and it took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, depending on who you talk to. I had a great time there. I wish sometimes I could go back to that era, but yeah, I'd rather move forward. But he created his own studio, and in the end, he answered to his producers, and he answered to his stock people, especially when they went public. But even before they went public, he had to answer to people. And so when you have your own studio, you still have to answer to people. Ken Duncan, another one who I consider a friend, he has his own studio in Burbank again. Not to drop names or pitch or anything, but Duncan Animation in Pasadena, they still are carrying the torch for 2D, and they also do 3D CG stuff. But he started his own studio, and he's not, I don't think, making his own projects. Projects cost money. You gotta come up with the capital. So he works for hire as a freelance outsourced type of studio. But within that, he gets to continue to work on his own stuff, and he has a body of people, that he pays to work for him and can help him develop his stuff. So, yeah, so maybe he doesn't get to do his own stuff necessarily, but he's got a lot more freedom than you would if you were just working for somebody else. Just working on staff at a studio. Working like as a director for hire, which is again how it is mostly done. And some projects are great, some projects not so fun. Lucas the Spider, yeah. So Josh started at Pixar. He went to Rhythm and Hues, which is where I worked. So this is Josh. Boy, I'm just dropping names like crazy today. I don't remember his last name. I haven't talked to him in person in years. But anyway, we worked together at Rhythm and Hues. I was a mentor for younger animators, and he and a couple others sat in a room with me. And we had a lot of laughs and threw things at each other and had a lot of fun. I take no responsibility for Josh's skills. He already had it. Slice, Joshua Slice, that's what it is. And then he was not sure if he should go to Disney or not, and I was kind of helping him through that because I'd worked at Disney, and I had friends who worked there a lot at the time. I think this was around the time of Frozen. I had a lot of friends who worked there still, not so much now. And then he bounced back and forth between there and Blue Sky. As far as I know, again, I don't talk to him directly anymore. I just talk to him on Facebook and stuff. But I think his home has been Disney. That's where he's been most of the time. I think he did the Spider while he was in between jobs and just messing around. And then he put it up on YouTube, and the rest is history. I don't know the ins and outs of how it happened that he started getting hits. I think it just happened. As far as I know, it's just he went viral. It's just something that happens, right? To some people. And he's the nicest person on the planet, was more surprised than anybody, but delighted. And then he fulfilled the promise by making more cool little shorts. And then he made enough of them, and they had enough hits, and then he made the plush toy, and that's, I think, when the deal happened. So yeah, he started at Pixar and then he moved on after that. I heard about some AMC deal today. They're going to lose a lot of money. No, I have not heard about that. I will have to look into that. That sounds intriguing. AMC and Universal. Boy, it sure seems like there's a lot of monopoly stuff happening out there, which I don't think is such a good thing. When I started in the business, way back when I was an old man and I started in the business, a young man and I started in the business, it's true, I'm old. And when I was young and I started out, there were a lot of small studios, and what would happen is if Disney was done with you, meaning the film was over, they would release you and you would collect unemployment, or you would go and get a job at a smaller studio. And one by one I saw the small studios dropping off as the bigger conglomerates started taking over, and suddenly Hanna-Barbera becomes whatever it was, Universal, and then Universal becomes Disney, and pretty soon the Flintstones, which were the staple of Hanna-Barbera 1,000 years ago now, pretty soon they're now Disney characters. And you're like, hey, wait a minute, there's something kind of unfortunate about that. But again, try to stop progress. It is what it is, and you just kind of go with the flow. But I do get a little nervous when I see everything coming down to 1 or 2 studios, because it ruins your options. One of the reasons I succeeded so well in the business when I did was because we would bounce from studio to studio, and each one you'd go to, you'd make a demand of some sort. It's like, well, I want more money. Well, I want to be I don't want to be a beginner anymore. I want to be a junior or a senior. And with that goes not only a title, but cash outlay. And so we were able to kind of make demands by bouncing around from studio to studio. And then if, let's say, you were one thing at one studio, well, you could go to another studio, get a raise, come back, and now you're that thing and you're not something else. You're actually, it's like, well, if I'm going to come back to the studio, I'm not a junior anymore. I'm actually a senior. So that's what I want to come back as. Give me the money, give me the title, and give me the job itself, which jobs got easier the higher up you got into the world. So you definitely wanted to keep moving up, but sometimes the only way to move up was to bounce from one place to another, and that's gotten a little bit more difficult, I've noticed. So that's kind of an unfortunate byproduct of these studios turning into conglomerates. Power of cuteness always prevails. The spider. Yeah, I think it's adorable. I will say this. I shouldn't be even talking about him on here because it's not. I don't know. It's probably just not cool to talk. But it's such an innocuous thing. Josh was not sure if he should go to Disney because of the things that I had told him. It's like, well, they have an aesthetic there, and if you kind of have a different aesthetic, then they're not. Pixar and Disney studios will let you know if they don't, or they just won't hire you if they don't think that you're kind of fitting in with the aesthetic that they sell. So the family audience and the family audience aesthetic. I don't know what else to call it other than that. It's a thing. And Josh wasn't sure if he had it or not, and I was trying, or if he was going to fit in there. And I was adamant, if I remember correctly, maybe you can pipe in and correct me someday, that I said, just get in there and get the job, and then you can work out the rest later. That's what I did. I had the Disney aesthetic until I was at the studio, and then I was young and arrogant, and I didn't have that aesthetic anymore. I went in there with a rather dark personality in many ways, and quickly thought that it wasn't probably going to be a good fit for me in the long run, and bailed to DreamWorks as soon as I was allowed out of my contract, and was very happy at DreamWorks for a really long time, and was there in a real golden era for the studio. That probably shouldn't say this. I always get mouthy on these Twitch sessions, but I think when it switched over to CG, that I think that I think that Jeffrey Katzenberg's heart was kind of broken by the lack of success of his 2D films. And after Shrek, he just went, all right, well, let's just make money. Let's just bring on the cash. And then he would say things just like, all right, well, they had a contest at DreamWorks. Boy, I'm really going to get in trouble for this. They had a contest once where they said they'd pay us for ideas and said, oh, if you come up with an idea and we use it, then we'll pay you X amount of cash up front, like a contest. So, think about that for a minute. It's like, you mean they didn't have people helping them come up with ideas? Of all the millions of ideas out there, they were looking to us, the studio, for ideas. It was, dream come true. They were going to look at your ideas. I don't know if they used any of them. They did use one of my ideas, which was for hybrid dragon babies, donkey dragon babies. I think I've never even seen that film, but I heard somebody say I think the second one, there are babies at the end of it. But everybody came up with that idea. There's nothing unique about that. They were looking for ideas for stories, not specific things like that, which are easy to come up with. But I've kind of got off the path. But so Katzenberg, yeah, he was a pretty in-your-face type of person, and his studio was like that. Anyway. So, well, hello there, Morning Shark, and welcome. And Ash Blossom asks, do you have any tips on how to enter the industry? Oh, do I ever? I could just go on and on about that all night. I say it all the time. So for those of you who are who have piped in on these before, I apologize for going over this, but I think it's worth it needs to be said. It needs to be said again and again and again, and it never changes. So it's just something to commit to memory. How do you get into the industry? You must make contact with people. You must have contacts. Does that mean, oh, I'm a shy person, I don't like to, well, right now we can't meet in person anyway, but, oh, I'm too scared. I'm too scared to meet somebody in person. I'm not comfortable with that. Well, that's why the internet was invented. All of us have the ability to go on Facebook, for example. I don't know, that's for old farts, but go on Facebook and join a group. I'm in a couple of them, for animation, and put your work out there and get feedback. And if people tell you, wow, that's not very good, and they will. They'll say that if you're not. They're being honest, and that helps you. To Sean, donkey, dragon, hybrid, and shark. It was not my idea. A lot of us had that idea. I'm just saying I put it in my idea, and they looked at it, and and I got paid just for submitting ideas. But I'm sure everybody had the idea. Oh, what if Shrek and Dragon, the donkey and baby, got together and had hybrid babies? So I'm not taking credit for that in any way, shape, or form. What are the Facebook groups? So I belong to one. I don't know what they're called. One is like 2D animation. One's you just type things in and you'll find it. If you're in Facebook and you type in 2D animation or classic animation or share my animation, there's so many groups out there. I wouldn't know where to start. And it isn't so much important that you find the right group as that you just are out there, that you're trying things and working to try and get your stuff seen and get critiques, get feedback, and ultimately make friends, because that's what's going to make the difference. Make it or break it will be, do you make friends in the industry and so, for example, we've even had it on here. Let's say a couple of you are chatting and one person says, oh, you want to do that? Well, I happen to know that this studio I heard is actually hiring. Maybe you want to put your portfolio in there. Stuff like that. Or I work in a studio. I'm not an animator, but if you want to be an animator, I can recommend this because I've worked there and I've got insight. And even if they don't give you a personal reference, but at least you got that tip. And you won't get that tip if you're sitting at home alone without any contact with the outside world, which is how I started. I mean, I had no contact at all. I got in the business because I lived in LA and I was young and dumb, and I was a driver driving a car all around town, delivering things for an editing house. And the guy saw that I always tell this story, but I'll share it again. The guy I worked with said, look, you're drawing all the time. You obviously don't want to be an editor, although I did, but not once I saw how editing worked in Hollywood. I'm like, He says, you want to be an animator? Well, my sister-in-law does it for a living. She draws Mickey Mouse, makes a lot of money, and she's not even an artist. She's in a studio across town in Studio City. You want to do that? Like, after I picked myself up off the ground, he said, yes, I want to do that. I didn't get the job immediately, but eventually I did get where I wanted to be. I just needed my foot in the door. So that's lesson from the old wise man is get your foot in the door any way you can. Do whatever you got to do to get that first step, make a contact that gets you in, or get in as an intern. You know, get in as somebody at the lowest possible level. Once you're there, you can prove to them what you can do. You are never going to be hired just plucked out of the ether and oh wow, you're a fantastic animator. Here, let's place you in this high-paying, high artistic job that allows you to be as creative as you want. Probably not going to happen that way, but get your foot in the door, keep practicing, show them what you got, and you won't stay down long. I once had that said to me once. I got not demoted, but the studio got small, and they couldn't keep me as a supervisor. And I said, hey, I really liked that. I was having fun with that. And the person who had gotten me that position said, yeah, you're good. You won't be down for long. You'll see. And he was right. So, recent grad, Morning Shark, you're a recent grad and classic case of struggling to break into the industry. Well, just know that you're in good company. It is hard. Let's just lay our cards on the table. It is difficult because think of it in terms of the studio's perspective. They are going to invest in you. And by the time they do invest in you, it's because they know that you're going to work out. And if you don't work out, it's a big deal. They've invested in you and it didn't work out, and they've lost money and time when somebody else could have been doing that. And so they don't want to take too many chances. They don't want to, they can't afford to risk too much. So that's what their perspective is on the thing. So you have to, I'm not saying you have to be sensitive to their cause, but you just have to understand how it works. And there are thousands and thousands of people out there who want to do exactly what you're doing. And every one of them who makes it has given it everything that they had. And so you have to give it everything you have. And you have to risk the fact that you might not get it. You have to just do it anyway and keep trying and trying. Most people I know who try to crack Hollywood, they always say, well, I'll give it X amount of years. And then if I haven't made it, that's how much I can afford to gamble. And then if I haven't made it, I will try something else. So, everybody has their limit. You have to pay the rent. You have to pay your own way in life. And unless you've got a secret patron somewhere, you have to find your own way in this world. But you got to take risks too. So, that's just all part of the game of trying to get into the business. They won't know about you unless you try. One of the things that Disney does, I've noticed, is that they actually keep people on file. That's how I got in. I had applied a few times and they're like, we don't really need anybody right now. But boy, when they needed people and my name was on a list because I was cool, the guy came up to me with a clipboard and said, hey, they need people for Pocahontas. You want to go? I'm like, sure. He goes, it's starting Monday. You still want to go? And I go, yeah, sure. Why not? Because my studio was closing. And so that's how I finally got into Disney. I was always talented enough to do it, apparently. But it wasn't until they needed me that they suddenly went, are you out there? Because we need you now. Start today. And I stayed because they needed people. And they were like, I said, well, I'm not going to stay unless you give me more money. And they were like, okay. And I said, I'm not staying unless you give me a better job classification than beginner. And they went, okay, can you keep working, please? And I was like, and I want a Disney pass. All right, that's not entirely true. They offered that to me, but I just think it's so funny to say that. And I want a Disney pass. I want to be able to go to the park whenever I want. And that's what they gave you back in the 90s. And everybody who worked there got it. But it was people like me who were negotiating for a better salary that started making the prices go up for artists. And we started demanding things. And depending on who you talk to, we maybe got a little carried away with it. And that may have put things to a stop, but I digress. The point is you just need to get your foot in the door. and it takes time. So put yourself out there and see what happens. It's like the best thing. Well, I'm glad that you like the dragon baby hybrid, Sean. Again, I didn't come up with that, so don't give me any credit for it. But I like to think that I was part of the team that came up with it. We all probably had the same idea. Ash Blossom using ArtStation to get a start. That's great. I mean, you know, building a community, talking to people, finding out, ask people, you know, when you get on these groups, say to them, have you tried doing this? Have you ever tried doing a cold call, which is basically you just call somebody up out of the blue and say, hey, can I talk to you about this? I like to think of informational interviews as a good way to like get people to know you. Is you say, hey, my school is doing a project. I'm looking for someone to interview for a paper. People love to talk about themselves, and you can interview someone for an informational interview, and just say, I mean, you know, who cares what you're doing it for? Make something up, but as long as you're not being too pushy or anything. But you say to them, I'm not trying to get a job. I'm not trying to schmooze. I'm not trying to invade your personal space. I just want to talk to you about how you got into the business, because I'm interested in getting into the business and finding out, you know, what are some of the different paths that lead to the career that you got. So that's, you know, first you have to find the people, and then you have to find a nice way to get a hold of them. What you never, ever, ever do under any circumstances, write this down, make a note of it, and promise me and the world that you won't do it, is get too aggressive with people and ask them for favors and ask them to do things for you. That's number one no-no, is to try and get people to do you a favor and say, well, just do a bit for me because you like me. Yeah, well, good luck with that. Now, I also say all the time is that there are no rules. Do whatever works. Cheat, you know, break the rules, do whatever it takes, because again, there are no hard and fast rules when it comes to the entertainment business, to the business of creativity. But take my advice. If you're smart, you won't push it. You won't try to get in somebody's face. I used to do speaking engagements a lot before we locked down, but a lot more. I teach full time now, but I used to do a lot of speaking engagements, and it would be interesting to see the different people, how some people would come up to you and they'd say, wow, I really like your stuff. I really think, you know, I love that you worked on Hercules or Sinbad or the El Dorado or whatever. Oh, by the way, I've happened to have this drawing. Could you take a look at it? You know, it's like they're not asking me a favor. They're flattering me, and then they're slipping the favor in. I'd be like, oh, yeah, great. That's awesome. I am not going to recommend you for a job, but that's really awesome. But, you know, but it starts a rapport without asking for too much right out of the gate. A lot of cool questions here. Some culture fraud. Self-teaching 3D, starting for good results. This is a good way to get in. If you are making projects, you owe it to yourself to put them up on YouTube, put them up on Vimeo, put them up on Facebook. You may only get 6 hits, but if you keep doing it, number one, you have a body of work. Number two, you may build an audience eventually. I built a small audience from scratch on YouTube starting years ago, and my audience is now like up to 1,000 viewers. Somebody few Twitch sessions ago, they were like, oh, can you link us to one of your videos? And I linked to what made my semi-viral fame, and it's this dumb remix I did of an old song from the 80s, and that ended up getting like 350,000 hits, and I got all these subscribers. I hope they're not disappointed. I hope they're not disappointed that I haven't kept putting up remixes of freestyle 80s songs. But I've got a following now, and I put stuff up and people look at it, and sometimes they comment. I've got a following on Facebook, a small one. You know, you'll never know unless you start it. You know, started with 0, and now I'm getting started on DeviantArt a little bit. It takes time, but you got to start somewhere. So yeah, YouTube has been really good to me, and it was certainly good to Josh Slice, you know, with Lucas the Spider. Did I design the character for Pocahontas? Absolutely not. When I came on Pocahontas, I was brought in when there were only 8 weeks left on the production. I was brought in just to do in-betweens and finish it off. And it was after that that I said, if you want me to stay, then talk to me about perks and things, and let's renegotiate my contract. And after that, I had a lawyer negotiated. Well, shout out to John Cantor. People who were in the business when I were in that would be a familiar name, because everybody used him, and he was an interesting character. I'll just leave it at that. He was very businesslike, and so he was like, "I'm not your friend. I'm your lawyer, and I'm going to try and get you the best deal possible." And he did, and it was great. And then after a while, we didn't need lawyers anymore because the business had changed, and it was like, "We're not offering you anything. We're saying, do you want this job? If you do, take it. If you don't, then don't." And that was how things were at the end. So no, I did not design Pocahontas. I spent a lot of time learning to draw that character. I probably could still do it if I tried. I'm not going to try right here because it's copyrighted stuff. And also I don't want to make a fool of myself by proving I can't draw that character anymore. But yes, I drew it a lot. I worked on the scene where she says goodbye at the end. She goes like this. But I just did in-betweens on that one. So whoop-de-dang. But it was a beautiful project to work on. I got to work with Glenn Keane, and that was worth its weight in gold. And I learned so much from him, not directly, but it was just part of the team. But that was just priceless what I learned from him. Do I know Butch Hartman? I did not know a person named Butch Hartman, or if I do, I've forgotten. I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and it's so embarrassing to have someone come up to me and say, "Hey, remember me?" And I'm like, "No." And then they say, "Well, we worked on this movie together." And I'm like, "We did? I'm so sorry. It's terrible form. Do me a favor, when you get out in the world and you're working in the business, remember everybody. Remember their names and what you did with them. It's really good form to remember people's names. It's the most important thing that there is to a person, is their name. And to not remember their name is probably one of the bigger insults that you can imagine. So yeah, don't be like me. Be better than I was." But yeah, no, I don't know Butch Hartman. Sorry, I'm reading a message from Morning Shark. I'm intrigued by this. Paying back student loans seems to be I have nothing else to say about that, but yeah, it is tough having to pay back student loans when you just get out of school, you're ready to go conquer the world, and then you've got to go back, you've got to go pay loans off. That just doesn't seem fair. But that's the reality of life, huh? So all I can say is it gets easier the longer you go at this game. I was told this advice when I was very young, and I thought that it was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard, but you're probably, most likely you're going to live a lot longer than you really can even imagine. And there's going to come a time when you think you're going to be done with all this stuff and sick of it, and you'll find out that no, it just morphs into something else. So be good to yourself. Look at the big picture, look at the long haul, and set goals that are far away, because you'll be amazed both how quickly it goes and also how much time that you really have. So enjoy the ride. That's the best way I can put it. So if you're in the position of, oh, I got to pay off my loans and stuff, well, just keep chipping away at it. You'll get there. And then as far as keeping on a schedule, well, that is up to you. It's the same with anything: a diet schedule, a workout schedule, a working schedule. A lot of people I know say the best solution is that you want to do a little bit every day. And for me, it's always do it up to the point where you're just starting to get sick of it, but not sick of it yet. So you're still like, oh, I want to finish that one last thing. Okay, stop right there, because I'm still excited about starting the next day. I will still drop things and pick it up the next day. Whereas if you keep going and going and going until you burn yourself out, then it's no longer fun, and you're just trying to finish, and you're probably going to think of it as being painful. So that's my main advice for keeping on a schedule is, first of all, act like you still have a job. And if not getting up early every day, at least get up at around the same time, and then do something in a systematic way. Frankly, I've been out of work a lot, so I know a thing or two about this. But be very systematic in how you work and go, okay, now it's time for me to have lunch. Now it's time for me to draw. Now it's time for me to write my friends on email or, or call or whatever. Now it's time for me to get back to work and continue working. And then I will stop at exactly this time and I will continue on with my day, doing whatever I would do if I was working for a living. So that's how I've survived. To be perfectly honest, I always found being laid off a glory, at least as long as I had some cash saved up, because it gave me time to work on my stuff. And therein is another lesson, which is always save your money. You'll get a first job, you'll think that you're in heaven, and you'll want to go out and spend it and buy a car or something silly like that. Don't resist the urge, put it away, continue to act like you're a college student paying off your loans. And then when they come up to you with some HR person with big shoulders, that's I'm not going to say HR. Some person comes up to you with big shoulders and their hands clasped together and a big fake smile on their face, and they'll say, hi, we don't have any work for you, so we're going to invite you to leave the studio. Well, then you will have smile back at them and say, oh, that's fine, I've got money. And if you want me to come back when you're ready to go again, I would be happy to. And they go, oh, cool. Okay, yeah, well, we'll keep you in mind, assuming that you actually were a good fit with the studio. So, yeah, so save up your pennies and continue to act like you're working even though you're not. So those are some of my tips. But like I said, I'm an expert when it comes to that. I was out of work a lot. When I say out of work, I wasn't unemployed a lot. I wasn't searching for jobs a lot. When I was employed, it was almost like that was my vacation. So, but I know how to handle when you're off work. I think I got pretty good at it. So, Jimmy Neutron and Jenny fan of the Fairlight. Okay, well, I'll look into that. I'm curious. Mike Gassaway, don't know him. And also, too, I'm a 90s animation person. I went into creature effects at the beginning of 2006-7, and I did like live action creature hybrid animation type stuff from that point on. Kind of got out of character stuff at that point. So well, so this is for Oscar, so thank you. I'm glad you like my honesty. I figure why mince words? There are things I can't say because I signed contracts and I get into trouble for that, or I have in the past, but I'm like, why mince words? Why not tell it like it is? It's still a dream job. I mean, even working at Disney, I'm always quick to point out that I was in a place at that time and it wasn't a fit for me, but that doesn't mean it wasn't for everybody else. Clay Cadis, there I'm name dropping. He was my friend. He was there and he was a cool guy and he was nice to me. But he was getting started at the same time I was. He just directed this movie with Kurt Russell on Netflix. I guess it was last Christmas, but Santa Claus, something or other. Santa Claus Comes Back or whatever. And so he and his wife were stalwarts at Disney, very cool people, and did very well. He stayed at Disney all the time. And until he decided to go out and until he got an opportunity to direct live action, took it, and maybe he's still at Disney. I don't know. Again, I'm not personal friends with him, so I just remember that he was a cool person and he really wanted to succeed, and he did. So Disney was a great place for him, and he stayed all those years. And there are plenty of cases like that. People who started when I started and they're still there and they had a wonderful time. It just wasn't a good fit for me. And DreamWorks fit me better up to a point, and then DreamWorks wasn't a good fit for me anymore. And I was very fortunate that by a certain point, I'll lay this otherwise sage advice once again. At a certain point, your work speaks for itself, and the business is small enough that people can look at your resume and your reel and go, okay, you're a working professional who wants to transition to another company. All they'll ask is, well, why are you leaving the old one? And then, in my case, it was like I legitimately wanted to get into creature effects. I just thought it was cool. I'd done character stuff, and I wanted to try something different. And so when I went to Rhythm and Hues to work on things like Life of Pi and the Hulk and stuff, it was because I wanted to try something different, expand my horizons. And then we went back and did character stuff some more on Hop and Chipmunk movies and stuff like that. So yeah, the good news is at a certain point, for anyone who's listening, at a certain point you will find that you may not have to work as hard as you did when you were first getting started, and your work speaks for itself a little bit more. There will always be layoffs. There will always be that fight to get enough money to keep a studio going or to keep a production going and whatever. That's just the nature of art as a business. You can't get away from that. But there does come a time when it gets a little easier from the employment standpoint. If things are happening and you're a nice person and you've got some jobs under your belt, you'll get work. I don't know anybody. I always say this. I don't probably word it right, but I don't know anybody who's had to move into a cardboard box yet. Everybody I know that I started with either got out of the business because they didn't want to do it anymore, or they are still in the business, just doing different things than they did when they started. But the people who love it, they're still loving it. They're still doing their thing. So that I think that says more than any opinions on the matter. The proof is people are still working after all these years. So yes, movies comment to do. It's comment to see the final part. The cutoff. I think what Ash Blossom, what you're asking is if you're doing a scene and do they cut it shorter or do they cut it off? Well, some of my favorite moments in big movies I worked on in creature effects got cut out. I think they eventually called it Cirque du Freak, the vampire's assistant, but we just knew it as Cirque du Freak. There was a whole bit of business that I did with these minion-y looking things in hoods. They were called tinies, I think. The gruesome little creatures that were mutated vampires who had been punished for whatever reason, and so they got turned into these ugly little guys in robes. And I did a whole thing with them at a trough eating meat. It was just sickening, but in a cute, fun kind of way, which is the stuff I like. And I had carte blanche on that scene to do whatever I wanted, and the director was just thrilled. He's like, "Yeah, make it more sick, make it more gross." Ugh. And then it ended. I saw the final film in the theater, and it didn't even resemble the film we'd worked on, that we'd been working on for months and months. And my scene got chopped in half or turned into a montage or something like that. I was just like, "Oh well, that's the way it goes." Cabin in the Woods. We had all these different endings that the guy animated, Matt Shumway, who's one of the best guys I ever worked with, who's at ILM right now, was up for an Oscar for the Revenant, the bear. So he and I did a lot of the I worked with him on Cabin in the Woods, and we did a bunch of monster stuff that either didn't make it into the final film or looked different when they finally put it in the film. And then Golden Compass, my claim to fame was a scene with a golden monkey that took me a year to do. It went 6 to 8 months to do, and then got cut out of the film. And Matt joked about that with me not too long ago when I put it up on Facebook for people to see, and he wrote me and said, "Hey, we need another version of that. Can you get that on my desk by the end of the week?" So that was the joke. It just never ended. And then Pocahontas, there was a scene that was cut out that was eventually put back in, but I didn't work on it. El Dorado is famous. I've got to watch my mouth here a little bit, but famous for having a lot of stuff in it that was changed. They changed Miguel's character a little. I worked on Miguel, and they changed his character a lot mid-film. They changed a lot of things in that film, and that's where I can't talk about this stuff or I get yelled at, or sued or something, I don't know. But a lot of things changed on that film, and Miguel's character in particular changed, and so we ended up having to work on that a lot and change that. And then Sinbad and his girlfriend, I can't remember her name, but their looks changed, and we had to go back and redo some of that stuff. I think I can say that. I mean, it's public knowledge. They probably say it on the DVD extras. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But if anybody's still going to bust me for that, I would be very surprised. I don't think people really are on top of it. I got in trouble when IMDb was first out because I was telling secret stuff about one of the films, and somebody contacted me anonymously and said, "You can't do that." I have a history of this. I got in trouble when I was working on the Jungle Cruise, and I was sitting there with a crew of kids and families and people, and it was a hot day, and the ride wasn't working and I had to stall, and I kind of panicked a little bit. And I said, does anybody have any questions? Yes, the animals are fake, and yes, the boat's running on a track. Anything else? And my boss came up to me and went, don't do that, don't do that. And it's like, well, apparently some people really do think that the animals are real and that the boat is being sailed for real. And to them, I tip my hat, because if you're that naive, you're either 4 years old or you really, really believe in magic. But I made a point. We're not supposed to really ruin the veneer of magic. When you're working at Disneyland, you're supposed to keep the show going, and I respect that. I think that that's a good way, a good outlook. Is when I was a kid, I didn't want to know that it was fake. Well, maybe I did a little bit, but I wanted to, believe that it was all kind of magical and fun, and not be invited to look at, for example, Disney backstage, which is basically, it looks like a warehouse. What else would it look like? That's what it is. So I understand them wanting to keep that under wraps and not ruin the illusion. But my point is that I have a history of kind of just sort of mouthing off about stuff like that, and then I get in trouble later and shake my head and go, "What'd they say? What'd they say?" So yes, when you sign a contract at a studio, odds are you're signing a non-disclosure agreement, which says you will not talk about the production and the secrets that went on. And again, which I think is fair. That's very duplicitous to say, "Oh, I'm working on this film, but I'm going to go run around and tell people all the problems that the production has," and most problems are just stuff that they just haven't worked out just yet. So I had my reasons for wanting to mouth off about the film that I did, and they corrected me on it, and I took it down. And I said, "Yeah, you're right. I'm not gonna keep this up. I'll take it down, and I won't do that again. You're right." But I also know that you can talk about stuff a little more anonymously. You can get away with it. You can still talk about it. Just don't name names, and you'll be all right for the most part. So cool. So you guys you loved Rugrats and loved Rocket Power. Well, that's cool. I have not seen the Rugrats movie. I used to love the show. I used to watch it every morning, even though I was in my 30s or whatever it was, late 20s. But yeah, I mean, parents will always kind of chide, well, not always, but sometimes parents will chide people. Oh, you're watching an animation, it's for babies. Well, it is until you're getting a 6-figure salary for making animated films, which happens sometimes. And suddenly it's not kid stuff anymore. But I get it. There's an aspect of that childishness to it all. What's the best way to stay in touch with me? Do you stream often? I'm here every week, same time, same channels. I'm glad that you're enjoying it, and I love that I'm motivating you to do stuff. That's one of the reasons I got into teaching, is because I had an awesome career and I really had a lot of fun with it. And I mean, work is work, but hey, if you're going to work, you should do this. And I like to encourage people to have as much fun as I had, especially when I find out how talented people are. So yeah, you can continue to get through to me this way. I think probably the best way at this point, I don't know, I'll have to ask. Come back next week and I'll tell you if I can give you personal email information and stuff like that. I'm not sure how that works, what they want, what the directive is for the school, or what the rules are. And I'm not 100% comfortable giving out my personal email right now, but yeah, come back next week, ask again, and I'll give you a different answer. I promise. Give you a more solicited answer. The one thing I can say is you can check out www.cgspectrum.com at any time, and you can talk to them and get lots of information, and they'll tell you stuff that maybe I can't right now. Answer any questions you like. If you go to the school and just drop them a line, they would love to hear from you and answer questions about stuff, including, can you get in touch with me or whatever. But Morning Shark, yes, I appreciate that I appreciate your feedback. I'm glad you're getting something out of this. Sometimes I feel bad. It's like, oh, well, do you want to learn stuff, like literal physical lesson kinds of stuff, or do you want me to just talk about stuff in general. It's difficult to do both at the same time. So I'll do whatever you guys want me to do, whatever's the most valuable for you. I consider this your time, and I'm here for you. So hit me if you want to know specific things. Otherwise, I'll just continue to sit and work on my specific pieces of animation that I'm always developing, because I do think it's fun for people to see the end product or see the work in progress. One thing that you learn by watching me do this stuff is how long it takes. Now I'm going particularly slowly while I'm doing this because I'm doing several things at once, but I can't stress enough, there is no fast and easy way to do animation. If you do a fast and easy animation sample, then you'll get exactly that. You'll get something that looks like it came together really fast. You get what you pay for. Quality takes time and requires commitment and loving what you do, loving the process of it, and it just takes time. So so there's well, thank you, Ash Blossom, I appreciate it. Thank you for following. So yeah, so I just can't stress that enough. I just like to point that out. So I always tell the story about a high school student I once had who said, where's the button you push to make it go? This specifically was for CG animation, but says, well, I want to make this character walk. How do I push a button and make it walk? I'm like, well, that's not really what we're doing in animation. We're actually trying to learn how to make animation that walks or runs or does things. That's kind of the point. And even if you do push a button to make a character walk, well, somebody came up with that originally. Somebody actually had that idea and came up with the original animation. So anyway, just like to point that out. The same person, I mean, again, we're talking high school, but this same person was like, well, can I just download rigs? I'm tired of all this stuff you're teaching. I want to just download rigs and start going. I want to start working with characters. And I said, you can do whatever you want. Nobody's stopping you. But I guarantee you, you're going to find you're in a place where you run up against a stopping point, and then you're going to ask me for help. And I'm going to say, well, I was trying to teach that to you, but you just had to leap into the next session. Again, these were high school students, and not trying to demean high school students. I'm just saying, when I was a high school student, I wanted whatever you got, give it to me now, and then I'm bored and I want to move on to something else. And I find that college-age students, sometimes they're a little more disciplined, sometimes not. I'm not saying anything against high school students because I think high school students are awesome. So I specifically designed things for high school students where you get immediate results right from the start. But it is a slightly different discipline. I mean, there's just a slight break between high school and college, but there's no reason to not start off, grade school. That's when I started. And I love that high school students and grade school students are getting the opportunity to work in ways that I never dreamed of when I was at that age. Well, I dreamed of it, we just didn't have the resources. So I'm not trying to diss high school. People say diss. That's such a 90s thing to say, isn't it? I'm not trying to say anything bad about high school students. There was just this one student in particular who just cracked me up, and he was good. He got real good, and I let him go. I'm like, hey, I'll help you. If you don't want to sit and learn from the ground up, I'll help you with whatever you got. But don't come to me later and say, hey, can you repeat all that? Because I won't. Well, I will. Okay, I'm a softie. Yes, I will. But yeah, Simon joke about the animate button, right? It's like, yeah. Well, we would call it hit the spline button. We'd always say, okay, go ahead now and hit the spline button. You're off and running. And that just meant that you're free to polish it off now and do whatever you want to it. And then the notes would still come. So you can change your animation style whenever you want. Well, you sure can. That's for Drawn Skull. Well, yeah, absolutely. You can change your style whenever you want. I find, I could be wrong, and maybe Simon, since you're in the house, can back me up on this. I find that people come equipped with a specific style, and that's why I was asking you, oh, what are the things you like? Am I asking because I want to personally know? Well, kind of. I want to know what people are into and what they're watching these days, and or what influenced them. But partially, it's for you to ask yourself, well, what is it that I focus on? What's the thing that I like the best? And maybe somewhere in there is the kind of job that you would get. It's like, well, if all I do is anime and manga, and that's all I want to do, and that's where my heart lies, well, are you going to go and apply for Disney and see if you can work on Frozen 6? I wouldn't think so. I would think that you're going to want to set your sights on going in the direction that is more in tune with that goal that you have, whatever that is. That also doesn't mean you rule out Disney. I always tell people I'm still riding the coattails at Disney. That was like 25, 26 something years ago. And I will introduce myself and say, I worked at Disney and I worked at DreamWorks. Just for the record, I know a lot of people who say they work there, and what they mean is they made coffee there, or they were in scene planning or something like that, and they give you the impression that they were actually on the front lines, drawing the characters. I'm always quick to point out that, yeah, I worked in cleanup when I was at Disney. I did not animate. I tried to be an animator there, but just it wasn't a good fit. So I ended up moving on to places where I could reach my goals. Disney was just too popular when I was there. Everybody wanted to, well, it still is. And the competition was too keen. I'd always worked at small studios. I knew I'd never survive there. Even if I got the job, I'd have to keep it. And by this point, I just turned 30 and I didn't love it enough. I wanted to do other things. I wanted to do like some of you guys are saying. I want to design characters, tell stories, write, make films, do shows, whatever. And I got to do all those things. I never would have been able to do that if I had only focused on animation. And so it was in my best interest and the studio's that I not go down that path and make a mistake. But I take a risk and go, well, okay, I'm not going to do that. Well, what do I want to do? Let's find out quick. And then just get to doing it. But yes, you can always change your style, and you will be required to, depending on what show you work on. You'll have to work in whatever style. In 2D animation, we always worked on one single character, or like the extras in the background, the groups of characters. I always worked on the lead characters. Ha, that sounds so arrogant, but I did. It just worked out that way. Villains or good guys, bad guys, whatever, but they needed me. And I did work on the front lines in all those films. If you've seen El Dorado and you see half the scenes in that film, I probably touched on one way or another for Miguel. That was my character on that film, and I was on it for 1.5 years, 2 years, something like that. And I watched the film, and I'm just like, wow, I worked on every single scene in this film, practically. Not everyone, but I sure did a lot of them. And same with Spirit too. I haven't seen that movie in probably since it came out, and I know I was on most of the scenes in that film. When I saw the film, I was shocked. It was like, wow, we really did make this in-house, didn't we? We did not use outsource on those movies. If I want to, Ash Blossom, if I want to go to a big studio, is it better I make some personal projects first to add to my portfolio? You will have to make some personal projects of some kind. You have to show them that you can work. Even if let's say you go to Disney and you want to be an intern, I recommend that you go and look at their requirements right now. If you're still in the process of putting stuff together, now is an excellent time to look at their requirements and start gearing your studio, your portfolio up for that right now. Don't wait. It'll change, but the basics will stay the same. Life drawing, examples of people and animals. Can you do those things? Can you do it at a level that's expertise? Well, then we'll want you maybe for the internship job. So yeah, build it up right now. How else are you going to show them what you can do unless you have a really strong portfolio of stuff? So you want to get things that are geared towards the studios you want to work for. Don't try to fake it. Do what you love to do, but keep in mind who your audience is going to be and what they're looking for. Look at the criteria for interns in the studios right now. It's all up there. Every big studio has internships, last time I checked, and just find out what they're looking for and then cater it to them. It can't hurt. You're still going to be in competition with everybody on the planet. But again, you got to start somewhere. So go do it. John Scott, Spawn. Yeah, I remember you like Boondocks and Spawn. Yeah, that stuff's cool. Teen Titans. And there's Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty, I know a lot of people who worked on that show. And so they, clearly they hire and fire their, what we call it, like the revolving door syndrome, where they'll bring people in and they'll bring in more people. And then they'll have a layoff probably, and then keep some of them, and then get rid of some of them, and then just keep looking for new talent. And that's the other thing I got to point out. Sometimes it sounds kind of cynical to say, oh, wow, it's really hard to break into the biz, and what am I going to do? How am I going to fit in? Well, the bottom line is they're always looking for new talent. Part of it is that they're looking for cheap talent. So people right out of high school or college, or people who are intern level, they work cheaper. And so that's one reason they're always looking for new talent, but it's just good to have fresh blood. Towards the end of 2D, there were a lot of people I knew who were getting very settled and getting kind of grouchy and complaining about all the wonderful things that they had, perks and stuff. And it's like, oh, this isn't working out the way I wanted it to. And it was no surprise to me that the studio was letting some of those people go and hiring people who are very excited to get into the business and get their turn. And that's one of the reasons I left DreamWorks. I wasn't excited anymore about like farting, singing animals. I mean, I say that in jest because I think it's funny. But, you know, I literally was not as excited about those films that they were making as I had been, and was excited about doing something else. And then when I was teaching too, when I decided to teach, I'm like, well, I've done everything I wanted to do. I'm not going to be greedy and keep asking for more. Yeah, I want to get paid. I want to make money still, but I just want to make sure that you know, I'm doing what I love and love what I'm doing, and why not give other people a chance to do what I enjoyed. I always tell this story. There was a person that I was teaching early on, and I told the story of how I had an opportunity to work on it was Iron Man 3, I think, and went through this whole process. They wanted to hire me, but they were being kind of funny about payment stuff. And just in the end, it didn't work out. And I was like, well, it was only going to be for doing secondary action anyway. And just little things. And I was like, I'd just come off a Life of Pi. We'd won an Oscar. I was one of the supervisors. And it's like, do I really want to do like an arm moving up and down on Iron Man 3? Is that the best I can do? And this student I had says, I'll do it. I'll do it for free. I'll do anything to work on Iron Man 3. And that really nailed it home to me. It's like, yeah, it's time for me to move on to other things that I'm excited about. I always say I'm semi-retired. I would go back on something if I was really excited about it. But really, production, it's for people who are younger than me and who are still getting started. And I got to have my fun. I want to make room for other people. Trust me, I'm not that big of a martyr. I still want to, you know, make a living. But as long as I can continue to make a living passing the torch so that other people get their chance, I would much rather do that. It's very fulfilling. And it makes me happy that a lot of the stuff that doesn't get written down, stuff about how to survive in the business and how to be an animator, how to get into the business, they don't write that stuff down. I can share it, and I'm happy to, and I share a lot of that in our classes. A lot of it is just advice on how to survive and how to get the job you want and what to do with it once you get it. And that's, I think, as important as the nuts and bolts of learning stuff, learning how to animate. All right, so we're rapidly running out of time. We've got about 5 minutes here. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you guys showing up, and I really love that you're asking questions. Is there anything else you'd like me to answer for you while we've got a few minutes left? I would like to point out, as I said before, I will be here next week and every week at the same time. So if you've got a question or something you'd like to ask, think about it and come in with a question next time, and I will be happy to answer. Obviously, I'm not here to recommend you to a job or anything like that. And again, I've just told you that I'm not active in the business, but my friends are. But you know, it doesn't work that way. But I can certainly tell you more about the school, CG Spectrum, and I can continue to ply you with anecdotes and information that I know about working and building up your craft in 2D. And then obviously I can help you with 2D technical stuff, which is what I'm ostensibly here for. Yeah, so any final thoughts, feel free to hit me. But yeah, love to see you on the next one. Nice to see you again, Sean. Thanks for the advice. I'll describe. Well, good, Ash Blossom. I hope you will continue to stay in it. As a final thought, if anything else, I will reiterate that most of it is persistence. I've seen some people who had no skills whatsoever excel. I saw one get all the way up to being an almost director with I'm not going to say no skill, but with surprisingly little skill or interest in the business when they first started out, and ended up flourishing, doing great. And it's just because they just kept at it and were cool people. Well, started out being cool people, and just kept out at it and just didn't give up. And that's probably with a lot of things in life, is just keep doing it. Eventually they got to figure out something to do with you, so they hire you. And keep being cool and keep making friends, and keep plying your craft. Remember, the bottom line at the end of the day is if you love what you do and you do what you love, you're already ahead of the game. The rest will come, but it starts with you just doing this because you can't think of doing anything else. That's the people that I know who survived the biz, who loved working in the business. They just can't imagine doing anything other than what they love doing. And in the end, they got their wish. It's still a job. It's not all happiness and sunshine, but boy, it's a wonderful job to have, and a wonderful thing to spend your time doing and get paid to do. So, well, thank you for your thoughts, Morning Shark. My thing that I'm doing is trying to motivate people like you, and trying to bolster people like you to continue on and to keep trying different things and keep at it. And trust me on this one, you'll find your place. If you've even got a modicum of talent, that doesn't sound right. You'll find your place if you love it and you keep trying things. You'll get there. And again, I'm more than happy to talk about different. I've only scratched the surface of different things that you can do. Thank you for following Morning Shark. Just scratch the surface of things that you can do. There are other things you can do. I'll talk about that as there's interest. Just physical things you can do while you're waiting to get your next job, or looking to get into the business. But that's all we got for today. Thanks again for the questions. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope to see some of you next time. Again, please feel free to come with questions and requests for things that you'd like to either talk about or see or have me demonstrate, because I can do that too, and demonstrate specific things in class that we do in class. I've been given permission to demonstrate them here in live feeds like this. So if you're interested in something specific, I can usually I'll come with something prepared, but I can do something on the fly too if you're interested in something demonstrative. So the difference in cartoonists, I think you're talking about the difference between more illustration and more animation. It's one moves, one doesn't, but both have a place. So on that happy note, thanks again for stopping by, and hope to see you again, and hope you have a great rest of the day or evening, and a great rest of the week, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Take care, be well, and stop by the other Twitch streams too. We got plenty of them. So stop by and say hello on some of those other Twitch streams, and check out CG Spectrum, cgspectrum.com. See you later. Thanks, Sean. Bye.